A few remarks regarding a history of daggers and queens, on the one hand, in the other hand. Introduction. This fragment, one line of text as a headline or title and one line of text as the body. That's all there is. Just 2 lines of text. Seems simple enough. The headline reads, "A History of Daggers and Queens." The body reads, "On the one hand, in the other hand." This is deceptively simple. At first glance, it appears to offer little, a regal and violent title, followed by a sentence fragment composed of 2 familiar idioms collapsed into one another. But beneath this modest construction lies a lattice of implications: linguistic, symbolic, political, and metaphysical. What follows is an extended exegesis that treats this fragment not as a sentence to be parsed, but as a fossil of meaning compressed under cultural and philosophical time. The work will proceed in 5 parts. 1. Surface structure and grammar. 2. Symbolic resonance. 3. Political and historical overtones. 4. Psycho-philosophical reading. And 5. Closing paradox. 2. Surface structure and grammatical collapse. Let us begin with the second line. On the one hand, in the other hand. This construction is not standard English. It fuses 2 common idioms. On the one hand, an expression used to introduce a perspective or argument. On the other hand, its counterpoint, typically used to introduce a contrasting perspective. These are tools of reasoned discourse, implying the existence of 2 distinct and opposing ideas. The phrase, in its full idiomatic usage, would look like, on the one hand, 10, on the other hand, 20. But here, that structure is ruptured. The second clause does not oppose or contrast, it absorbs. The phrase becomes, on the one hand, in the other hand. This is grammatical grafting, the insertion of one spatial metaphor into another. The result is a sentence that suggests collapse, containment, or recursion. Prepositions: on versus in. On implies placement upon, something visible, exterior, known. In implies submersion, enclosure, interiority, something hidden, absorbed, or enveloped. By moving from on the one hand to in the other hand, the phrase reverses surface logic. The supposed contrast becomes a containment. The opposing hand does not oppose, it holds. The hand that should argue instead enfolds. Argument becomes intimacy, or trickery, or a trap. 3. Symbolic resonance: daggers, queens, and hands. The title, A History of Daggers and Queens, sets the mythic and political stage. The pairing of daggers and queens carries deep symbolic overtones. Daggers are instruments of assassination, secrecy, betrayal, and precision. Not swords, not guns. Daggers are for close-range killings. The blade must be inserted by hand. They are the weapons of palace intrigue. Queens, meanwhile, are sovereign women, holders of power but often encircled by ceremonial constraints, patriarchy, and treachery. Think of Lady Macbeth, Cleopatra, Elizabeth I, or Guinevere. The juxtaposition of daggers and queens implies a history of betrayal, but also of elegant violence, of power performed through symbol, gesture, costume, and whispered command. Now connect this to the second line, on the one hand, in the other hand. The spatial logic becomes intimate. A dagger may be held in the hand. A queen may offer her hand in marriage, in diplomacy, or in death. And if on the one hand lies power, perhaps in the other hand lies the blade. One hand gestures, the other conceals. 4. Historical and political overtones. The phrase "a history of daggers and queens" immediately evokes royal courts, dynastic treachery, and the long shadow of female power framed through suspicion. A. Feminine power and danger. In patriarchal histories, the queen is rarely permitted clean power. She is often cast as the seductress, e.g., Cleopatra, the martyr, e.g., Marie Antoinette, the schemer, e.g., Catherine de' Medici, the childbearer, used to secure lineage, the witch, demonized when she exceeds her symbolic station. The dagger may be what she holds, or what is meant for her. If this is a history, it is likely written after the blood has dried, a quiet, reflective document full of hauntings, a ledger of acts not spoken in public. B. The collapse of political dialectic. The familiar "on the one hand, on the other hand" structure is how bureaucrats, judges, and politicians simulate fairness. It is the dance of objectivity. But "on the one hand" and "the other hand" collapses the dialectic. It suggests that the second hand does not present a separate idea, but holds the first. There is no true opposition, only the illusion of it. The debate is staged. The balance of power is a sleight of hand. The statement thus becomes a critique of rhetoric itself, especially the kind used to justify treachery under the guise of balance. V. Psychophilosophical reading. Let us now enter the space of psyche and paradox. The fragment operates on a logic of recursion, on the one hand, in the other hand. This forms a loop, a hand on a hand, one inside the other, like a Matryoshka doll or a Mobius strip. There is no exterior vantage point from which to understand the structure. If you try to take a side, you find yourself inside the opposing side. A. The hand as a site of meaning. The hand is not neutral. It is the executor of action, the vehicle of will, the organ of creation and destruction, the location of both touch and violence. In mystical traditions, the hand is also a symbol of fate, e.g., palmistry, or divine will, the hand of God. Thus, to speak of hands, especially in relation to one another, is to speak of the dialectic of action and reception, control and surrender. If one hand holds the other, there is no free gesture. B. A paradox of holding. If I say, "on the one hand, in the other hand," I imply a totalization. One side is held within its supposed opposite. There is no other position. This is a trap of self-reference, a linguistic ouroboros. It resembles paradoxes like, "This sentence is false. I always lie." The opposite of a profound truth is another profound truth. It raises the possibility that all oppositions are fake containers and that language collapses when pressed to its edge. Sixth, literary and poetic technique. The fragment's poetic power lies in its minimalism. It is not an aphorism or proverb. It resists being quotable in the conventional sense. Instead, it is a haunting shape, a structure that hovers, gestures, but never lands. A. Compression. The title contains an epic in miniature, a history of daggers and queens. The body contains a riddle of containment, on the one hand, in the other hand. This is the technique of the short form with infinite echo. Each word is doing enormous symbolic work. The title presents history and power. The body undoes logic. Together, they create tension without resolution. B. Reversal. The second line feels like a reversal not only of common speech, but of epistemic structure. On the one hand, in the other hand, reads like a slip of the tongue or a mutation, the kind that draws attention precisely because it seems wrong. But this wrongness is deliberate. It enacts what it critiques. the illusion of balanced discourse, the fiction of opposing views, the fallacy of dialectical fairness. Seventh, closing interpretive possibilities. Let us now consider several speculative readings. These are not mutually exclusive. First, the political reading. The Queen offers one hand, diplomacy, elegance, ceremony. In the other hand, hidden, the dagger. Or perhaps the opposite. The Queen reaches in apparent violence, but her other hand is extended in grace. All violence, all mercy in the same hands. Dusra, the psychological reading. This is the inner world of contradiction. The conscious hand claims reason, on the one hand, but the unconscious hand holds it, undermines it. This reflects how motives hide within motives, how trauma lives in the other hand while logic tries to explain it away. Mundram, the linguistic reading. The structure critiques English's pretension to balance and fairness. English offers binaries, right/wrong, yes or no, on the one hand, on the other hand. But this phrase shows the collapse of those binaries. If the first hand lives inside the second, there is no exit from the frame. English, too, becomes a closed system. Nangavde, the metaphysical reading. There is only one hand, repeating itself, masquerading as two. This evokes non-dualism, the idea that all divisions are illusions of mind. To say, on the one hand, in the other hand, is to show the folding of the world back onto itself. No self, no other, only mirrored gesture. Voit, conclusion, the dagger inside the gesture. Ultimately, this fragment is an invocation, a history of daggers and queens, on the one hand, in the other hand. It offers no moral, no thesis, only a condition that the structures we trust, language, duality, reason, history, are fragile mirrors, that the queen and the blade have always moved together, that arguments fold into themselves, that the hand we trust may already be inside the one we feared. The title promises a history. The body offers a gesture that undoes it. You expect a story, you receive a trap. This is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a phrase to be held, like a dagger in the hand.